Hi, it's Bobby from Fifth Avenue Cakes, and I thought it'd be fun to show you some pressure piping. I created some lily of the valley vines with just a #1 tip. So I'm going to show you how I brought this little flower to life. Alright, so what you need to do the lily of the valley pressure piping is very few things. A parchment paper cone with a #1 tip, and I have white rubbed down off-peak royal icing, a #1 tip with, in here I have royal icing that is also rubbed down and colored with some moss green food paste. And then just for the leaves, I have a #2 at the bottom. I wanted my leaves to be a little bit more bulbous, and it turned out better with a #2 nozzle. So that's all you need, plus a soft artist brush, a little bit of, this is cold water that I cooled, boiled down, and had put in the fridge, and then of course your paper towel and your cookie. And your cookie can be covered in fondant or royal icing. Both I would let, if it's covered in royal icing, let it dry overnight. If you've top coated it, let it dry completely overnight. If you have put fondant on it, I would also let it go till overnight if you have the time. So we're going to start by laying our vine for our lily of the valleys. And because I'm going to make sure that I have a nice good flow, and I do, because I'm working on a circle cookie, if I end up not being completely centered, I can turn the cookie and it will be centered because it's a circle, but we should be centered. So you want to do almost an S type of a scroll. You want your vine to look like it has a nice curve to it. You don't want it to just be straight and just kind of sticking out. You're going to release your pressure when you come down. I'm going to fix one little part in there that I think looks a little harsh, just with my brush here. The thing to remember is that you're going to have a lily going, let's see, a lily going here, and maybe 1 or 2 going inside. So when you go to put in your little stamens, you want to make sure you have enough room for that. So this will be my center vine, and then I'm going to bring in a few more. And you want to keep in mind that you have enough room to put at least 2 lily of the valleys, possibly 3. You want to meet your vines up with your main vine. Just make sure you have a nice curve. Now I'm not working with a line consistency, so you want to give yourself enough pressure that it will curve on you without getting jaggedy or what I call elbowing. Because we are doing pressure piping, so I'm working with an off-peak rub-down consistency. That rub-down is very important to do. You want to get all those air bubbles out of your royal icing before you begin to pipe. There's nothing worse than getting a beautiful... Now that line won't work, so we're just going to remove him real quick with our damp brush. Just kind of lift him up and get him out of there. Put him in the trash. And come back in like he was never there. And pressure piping is quite a unique technique. I I really have found that I like it a lot. You can use it to do fill-ins when you're doing any cakes that you just need a couple extra flowers, or there's some space you want to use up. You don't need a lot of ingredients or materials for it. Pretty much if you have parchment cones, piping tips, either dried emblem or egg whites, you're all set to go. So once you get that in, it's all nice and you like the way it looks, come in and put your stamens in. And keep in mind the space that you have. So I know I can fit 3 here. I can fit 1 here, 1 right here. So I'm just going to make a little stamen that kind of curls out. And probably 1 right about there. They don't have to be very big. You want them to curl the same way as your vine is going. And you'll have 1 on each of the ends. And that one didn't work out very well, so we'll just get him out of there. I think I might want 3 in here. Make one kind of tiny. You can have your stamens long or just a tiny little dot, but something that says, you know, I'm not growing out straight from that vine. Alright, so let's start with doing some Lily of the Valleys. So to do your Lily of the Valley, the best way that I can explain it is you're going to make a big round ball with your number 1 tip, and you're going to release pressure as you drag it out almost into an S tier shape so that it looks like that. Now that's your first petal. Your second petal is going to come right up against it. You're going to do the exact same thing, except when you drag out, you're going to point the other way. And he got a little bit long, so I'm going to just kind of tuck him in. So now you have 2. And your third one, you're going to come right over the top and be in line with your stamen and make a straight teardrop and come down. And you can use your brush if you think that they're too wide. So that's what you want it to look like. Now to go in here, you want to go maybe a little bit smaller. And you're going to do the exact same thing, release your pressure. And as you release your pressure, when you pipe out that nice ball, the royal icing's just going to go right with you. This one's going to be really tiny, folks, so I hope you can see him. Let me just fix him up a tad. I love my little brush. So he's really tiny in there. I'm going to do one over here and then I'll go back over there so you can see a little bit better. We went ahead and moved the camera because I felt maybe you weren't being able to see this as well as I wanted. I'm coming up on the side of where my stamen is because I want that center one to come. I'm going to turn this just for a second. I want that center one to come straight out so that it looks centered. The most important thing to remember when you're doing pressure piping like this is that you want all of your petals, we'll say, to be the same size with the same pressure. So as you can see, that's what I've done. And believe it or not, bluebells are done the exact same way. They're a little bit tighter. But if you want to think of it as a teardrop or an inverted S, that's all you're doing. You're just making a ball, pressure, 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 release your pressure, and just flip it out so that you get a nice little tail. Then come straight up on the top here. Make sure your tip is nice and clean. Pressure, pressure, pressure. Release that pressure and just pull that tail out. And he didn't pull out so well. So I'm going to see if I can just kind of coax him out. There we go. But it's an elegant little flower to do on a cookie, or like I said, the side of a cake, or the top of a cupcake. Anywhere where you just need a little extra. I'm just getting closer if I can. My husband's going to have a heart attack. I keep moving this cookie trying to get you guys to see it better. Make your ball, release your pressure, and bring up the tail. When you come up on top, you want to be close enough that you can make a nice little ball, but you don't want to smush what's on the bottom. Release your pressure and bring out your petal. Sometimes I like to just kind of smush these a little bit more together if I feel they got too separated. Now on the ones that you saw, once these dried, I colored them with Everclear and some pearl dust to give them a more elegant look. And you're going to want them to be, I think I let it dry maybe an hour. When you're doing this type of piping, because you're working with such a tiny tip and such a little amount of royal icing, it will dry fairly fast for you. And just like in nature, not all of your lily of the valleys are going to be the same size, so I like to make some really big ones, or big for the lily of the valley, and some smaller ones. And it's a great way to keep your piping skills up to date, because you have to work with such even pressure. I think I've told you before, I love my little brush. It just makes everything look perfect. So I'm doing my ball, I'm releasing my pressure, and I'm making it to the right. I'll do the same one over here, make my ball, and make it curve to the left. Come up on top, right by that stamen, make a teardrop, and bring it straight out as you release your pressure. Make sure that you release your pressure, or you'll be having a flower that just follows you all the way down. So here's my ball, I'm releasing my pressure and bringing out my tail. With this particular flower, you just want to make sure, like I said, that the second petal is right next to it, and that the final center one is right in line with that stamen. Release your pressure and come out. This is another technique that you want to use some freshly made royal icing, or if you've made it the day before, just stick it back in your machine, or if you made it by hand and paddle it up for about 3 minutes and bring it back to the consistency of freshly beaten icing. And it really does have to be of an off-peak consistency. You don't want to try and bring it down to a soft consistency because you won't get the definition that you're getting with the off-peak. And because we're working with a #1 nozzle, you definitely want to take the time to rub out. And there's one where I didn't release my pressure, so we're just going to kind of take him off. We don't want him. I know he wants to stay, but he has to leave. Okay, bye-bye. And keep in mind where you're putting them to the size that you want them to be, or how many you're going to put on each little vine. I like to go in and just scooch them together a little bit more. So here's our last one. And we're going to release our pressure and have it teardrop to my right. I know a lot of people will call this an inverted S, but I don't think it looks like an S. To me it just looks like a nice little teardrop that went right and left. So that's how I describe it. So when you have all your lilies done, and you like the way they look, you can go ahead and put on your leaves. And like I said, for these leaves, because they're a little bit longer than most, I found a #2 worked better. I want my leaf to go upwards, so I'm going to do the exact same thing, make a nice bobbleless ball, and I'm going to release my pressure as I bring it up. And then I have this neat little trick because I don't think it looks enough like a leaf. I'm going to take a little bit bigger of a brush and I just kind of coax it to be the length that I want and give me that vine in the middle. Just like that. And the same thing on the other side. And we're going to release our pressure as we come up. And that one didn't get very long, but I'm going to see if I can just coax him with my brush. And he's working very well, so that's fine. And then I just put a tiny little ball at the bottom here. And then we're going to go ahead and do our border. Before I do the border, I did do a little bit of just some descending pressure beads going down on both sides. And you just want to make a bead, release, and bring it around so you don't have a point. You can go a little smaller with each bead. Remember to release and bring that tail around. And I'll fix that one with a little brush. Just a little decorative thing. So the border that I chose to do is an S scroll and an inverted S scroll. So you're going to start with your first S. And then you're going to come and invert your S. And you're just going to do that all the way around your cookie. I thought it gave it an elegant little touch. It seemed to go nice with my Lily of the Valleys. Keep your tip really clean. And then I have several times shown you how to paint royal icing. So if you need a refresher on that, please feel free to go to any of those videos. And I also have a video on the different consistencies and how to get your royal icing to that consistency. So I will continue this and I'll see you when I'm all done. On your last little S for your border, stop just shy of where the previous one was and go in with a damp brush and just tuck it in. And no one will know where you stopped and started. So when this one dries, I will paint it the pearl dust to resemble this particular cookie. But in a matter, I think that whole cookie took me maybe 13 minutes to do. You could pipe a dozen or 2 dozen for any occasion. They could be for a wedding favor, they could be for a baby shower, just an innocent, beautiful Lily of the Valley cookie. Or you could, like I said, they're beautiful on the side of a cake if you need to take up a little bit of space or you just think something extra is needed. So thank you for joining me today, and I'll see you again next time.